Welcome to Rising Tides, the business podcast where we explore how leading ladies across industries make waves and rise above the competition. Join host Angela Merza and myself, Kim Hayden, as we talk to inspiring business women from entrepreneurs to executives about the strategies and tactics they use to get ahead. From their failures to their successes, you'll get an inside look at what it takes to make it in the business world today. Together, let's discover the power of collaboration and how raising each other up can help us all reach the heights of success. So dive in and join the conversation. Hello, and welcome. I'm super excited to be here today talking about something that's going to be, I think, truthfully, the deciding factor between those of us who excel in this new AI-driven world and those who lag behind. Because IQ and EQ have to be of equal portions, just like the culture of the company has to be as valuable as the data-driven part of it. And what does your brand say when it comes to the culture? Super excited to have our guest today. Maura Barclay is the CEO and founder of Changing Greatly, a data-driven talent and culture solutions consultancy that provides precision hiring. I love that, precision hiring. They say, what is that? Hire slow, fire fast. So this is going to be great to really dive into this. How do you build the team around you? With behavioral assessment and analysis, employee experience architecture, and cultural optimization through psychology, safety, and inclusivity. She is a certified change management specialist, a certified talent optimization partner, and predictive index, and a neurofacilitator. Okay, lots of big words in there, folks. Work with the Kansas girl here. And a neurofacilitation practitioner. She has had the privilege of bringing her thought leadership to Fortune 500 companies, the U.S. military, and the International Monetary Fund, among others. She currently sits on multiple boards in their cultural advisor. Oh, I'm excited. Are you excited, Angela?
This will be a good one. This will be a juicy one.
This is going to be
to get into
super
here.
juicy. Super juicy. So welcome to the show, Maura.
Thank you so much. Hey, good morning. There's nothing better than being described as juicy. I want to actually put that in my brand. So Angela, you and I are going to talk about how to do that.
I've never designed a juicy brand. I've never done that, but yeah, I love it. I love it.
Especially in business, because business is lacking juice, let me tell you.
Oh,
totally.
That's awesome. Well, it's interesting. We just had, so Angela and I are both here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and have worked forever together. 15 years or longer. We've built actually a $7.5 million brand together. And we just had our Convergex. Have you heard of Convergex? It's a NATO Defense Alliance panel. And it's I'm going to get you connected with the gal who runs it. It's ran by a woman. She's on 4 NATO boards. And as soon as I heard that you're like, this is so cool. Okay, I am going to be quiet. And I'm actually going to turn this over to Angela because she's the one that likes to dig deep. You ready?
I'm ready.
Wow. Big expectations here from me. Well, I just want to welcome you to the show, Maura, of course. And, before we dig into the business side of things, we'd love to know more about you and, any kind of backstory or funny story you have. Just tell us like what has led up to now, to the present day.
Well, I don't, a lot of times when I talk with people, even over the phone before we had Zoom, because not to age myself, but let's just say that I grew up, my formative business years, there was no Zoom. That was a Star Trek thing. And everybody thinks I'm bigger than I am, but I'm actually a very small female human being. I'm about 5'2". And I started my crash course in understanding culture by becoming a firefighter back in the day when it wasn't as common. And I also got a crash course in well, let's just call it competing values or double-edged swords, these types of things, where is one rule for the men and one rule for the women. And I really got two things, which was a first-hand look at the male psyche, because they did let me in. They were vulnerable in front of me. And I often felt like Jane Goodall, like just paying attention and taking notes and watching. Wow, this is what men are really like when they feel comfortable and safe. And on the other hand, it did not necessarily protect me from from those competing values. We'll just call it that, right? From like, well, the rules for you are a little bit different. And a lot of those men just did not know how to work with women because they weren't trained to work with women. I've seen it in a number of industries, actually. So there's a point where they need to take responsibility for that. But I saw it, like they did not have a software program for woman colleague. So it taught me so much about culture and really started me on my journey. And my journey has been very service oriented. From a very early age, I realized any business that I'm a part of needs to be in service of something greater than myself, because that gets me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's an interesting background. It's good to see another gal kind of with that background. Like I have a background in Muay Thai and kickboxing, so very male dominated as well. Oh yeah.
I got you. Muay Thai too,
Yeah.
right here.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Lots of
See, I
similarities
love to
here.
see Angela light up like that.
So,
She's like, yes, yes, girl power.
I'll hold
look,
pads for you
yeah.
anytime, sister. You just
Oh,
we'll figure
awesome.
it out. I got you.
Oh my gosh.
It said so. I'm literally from like that brand background that I'm the front of the house. I'm out there always, right? And that's my unfair advantage. I can walk in any room and I can start bringing people together. That's what I do and do well. What do you think your unfair advantage or your unique selling uh, position is? Like what has made you move to the level that you're at that others who have attempted have not?
I'd say there's a couple of things. One is I had the distinct advantage of growing up in a clinical household with a psychologist. My father is a PhD in psychology, and he brought that culture into our home. My mother was a social worker, so I grew up with a sort of bone deep curiosity about why people do the things they do, and trying to figure out why, and discovering motivations and getting to the root of why people want things and don't want things. So coming through that, what I would call social emotional learning lens, really gave me an advantage to understand and help people do better, be better, and change. So I took that and went into the mind body space. I spent about a decade as a teacher trainer. I helped therapeutic yoga instructors get certified, and I taught teachers how to teach embodied anatomy, which furthered my understanding of neuroplasticity, the physiology of reactivity. So some very pedestrian level neuroscience. And this has really fueled my, I would say, my specific lane of this is how I'm able to help you move your culture, because I know how to help people move themselves. Habit evolution through neuroscience and physiology. If we are not dealing with what is happening in the body, we are not going to be able to affect real change in the behavior. So I feel like that's not necessarily my unfair advantage, but it is a vector through which really effective change can happen very quickly and get traction and be long lasting.
Wow.
Yeah, that's definitely what makes you unique, right? That background and bringing all those pieces together, like your background from being a firefighter in that male dominated world to understanding culture there and that experience there. Nobody else has those unique points of experience like you do. And I just love how you've merged everything to create your brand and your offering. That's super unique. I love that.
Thank you. Well, as some of
Yeah.
my male friends have told me, I bro out well. So a lot of men feel safe with me because they're like my brothers, and they don't feel like I'm wagging my finger at them. I'm like, come on, man, don't do that. Right. So they don't feel like it's a woman shaming them. It's just like, come on, man, not cool. Let's move on. Right. Um, so that's been a unique thing too. I mean, a lot of men want to hear things from men, and I totally respect that. But I think I'm a woman who uniquely loves men in a way that, like, I appreciate how toxic masculinity has injured them, right? Like, I feel like I really see their side. That doesn't mean I excuse or condone crappy behavior. Don't get me wrong. There are men that, like, listen, you need to go do an Iron John thing. You need to get your stuff straight. You need to. I dated myself
I think
again.
I've heard Kim's philosophy on this, and it's my philosophy too. It's just a very, easy statement. Just don't be an asshole. Like
Yeah,
that's pretty
Yeah.
much life's philosophy for
that's right.
And
And
us
you need
too. Anyway,
you need a man to show you how to be a
yeah.
better man. Go with God. Just yes, go do that.
For
Doesn't have to
anyone, just don't be an asshole.
and
don't be an asshole.
I love how you are basically the embodiment of nature and nurture. And I
Mm,
think that when we
Yeah.
look at the brands and we look at our business and we look at the messaging we put out there, that literally is in essence, what is your nature and how are you going to nurture it? And are you killing it or are you growing it? And Angela is like she is a brand expert. So she's going to be able to dig out how all of this works and how you move through cultural development and bring it all together. Because I think this is important. When we see experts going in like yourself to SpaceX, to Red Bull, to like all these guys have cultural developers that come in and say, this is how we're going to grow your brand. You tell me that's the brand you want. This is what we have to do to make it happen. So I'm dying to know because this is what I want to know. Go
what
ahead,
brand?
Angela. Angela's always
Well,
quiet.
and
I just interrupt. Angela's like,
yeah,
wait,
that's
did
okay.
she
That's
stop?
okay,
Did she
Kim.
stop? Okay.
Is she done yet? Is she
Did-
done? Yeah, what was I gonna say, Kim? Thanks a lot. No, there's this
Real
sometimes
folks.
there's this incongruency in a organization with how they say they are and how they portray themselves externally and how they like reality, right? So I'd love to know more about that, but I always tell the companies I work with, it's like, don't tell me you're awesome, like show me you're awesome, right? It goes a longer way, like walk the walk. So what do you have to say about that when you come in to help organizations? Is that typical of what goes on? And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways to approach answering this, and I had like 3 or 4 things like blow up in my mind at once, and I'm like, all right, which one's going to be the most relevant for this question? I'll start with the following. Most organizations are oriented towards, I would say, transactional performance, output,
Mm.
right? The CEOs and executive team, leadership team, they're accountable for that output, those outcomes, that productivity. Now, the space that you're talking about is really more the personal innovation space of being able to have high trust environments where people are encouraged to make or have intelligent failure, right? Fail fast, pivot. Getting the wrong answer means we're that much closer to the right answer. And in this knowledge economy, most businesses, with rare exception, are that culture, but they have not been able to move I would say, the foundational proposition of how they're going to do business. So you have this performance-based idea, really, a performance-based culture that is trying to be the innovative, high trust culture, but they don't speak the same language. So the way that I address this is, I would say, simple but not easy. When I see core values in 2D, which means it's on their website, it's in their handbook, it's plastered behind the walls. My first question is, what behaviors are you encouraging and are you penalizing to make those core values a reality? Core values are
Mm.
nothing without behaviors to actuate them. So, for example, if your core value is teamwork, then my question to them is, what behaviors do you expect in order to meet that cultural that cultural commitment? That's the word. That cultural commitment. How are you committed to teamwork? Do you have collaboration? Do people share ideas and resources openly? Do people feel comfortable sharing an idea that is contrary to the one being presented? Are people being invited to offer curiosity or ask questions that go against convention. That is how you include people in teamwork, you see, but it is related to behaviors. And at the end of the day, culture is a set of behaviors. That's it. I'm trying to say it as eloquently as possible, but I'm just going to throw it out there. It's a fabric that is held together with behaviors. I forget who said this, but I say this all the time. You can define culture as the worst behavior tolerated. That's going to set the benchmark, and everyone's going to go from that point. And the benchmarks are set by the executive teams, but they aren't in that mindset because they're in their performance mindset, because they want to give the board the performance data. So they bring people like me in to help them map behaviors to core values. And then it's not just that. That is step one. Then you need to go into your job descriptions and see where those core values are declared and committed to. And then those core values through behaviors have to be integrated all the way through the application and candidate process, and then through the onboarding process, and then with a working agreement in the teams. Each team's going to have its own microculture, but the core of the cultural expectations needs to be there. And if you aren't hitting all those things, you will start to lose people, and they'll see that you don't really mean it because the behaviors don't reflect the cultures that are on the wall.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's nothing worse than being perceived as hypocritical, in your culture, and your culture really needs legs, like words on a wall that were created in a boardroom that, you just walk past on, a sign in your office that doesn't mean anything unless you put some legs to it.
I
Right.
heard a really awesome acronym yesterday called BOGSAT. I want to share it with you. It's a
Okay.
military acronym, and whenever there's a policy or something that people don't quite understand, like it's archaic, it's not really working, they said, "Oh yeah, that's BOGSAT." Like, what's a BOGSAT policy? Bunch of guys sitting on a table, sitting around a table.
Right. Exactly.
Basically, a
Out
bunch
of
of white
touch.
guys sitting around a table making decisions in a vacuum with no idea the lived experiences of other people.
Right, they're
BOGSAT.
out of touch with reality. That's a great acronym to remember, to keep in mind, because yeah, anything we do in a boardroom, we've got to test it out in the real world and see how it's actually running
Yeah.
out there. Um, so yeah, well, this gets us into the next portion, which we always ask our guests, can you share some tips, some steps that perhaps there's an organization out there that they have this culture problem. It's not coming from the top down. What they say is not who they actually are. They want to get more in step with those words on the boardroom wall. What are some tips, like maybe up to 3 steps or tips that they can take, that they can start moving that towards that goal?
Okay, the first tip is for the executive teams, and I would invite them to immediately go to the I4CP website. CEO is Kevin Oakes, and I4CP is the Institute for Corporate Productivity, and they do nothing but produce data about high performing organizations. And one thing that has become abundantly clear, the research is in, ladies and gentlemen, and anyone who identifies in a different way, the research indicates that high performing teams have a very powerful CHRO presence in the executive suite, and they have the power to push back. They are not there in name only. They are there not just in tactics, but in transformation. And they have to have power and influence at that table. They need to be respected and listened to. And executive teams that involve a CHRO typically have high performing organizations. So I would invite executive leadership to open the aperture of their understanding of what they need in order to have that high output, in order to improve that performance, right? And reduce expenses, which can be done through retention, which is going to happen through culture. If they will partner with the CHRO and give them a voice, step one, and it will go very, very far. I always say an ounce of CEO commitment is worth a pound of HR. but you got to give them the ability to amplify your decisions and your commitment. So that would be step one. Step two, training for managers. 78% of voluntary exits are coming from people who are leaving a bad manager. And this is because in organizational design, the people skills are still not part of the job architecture. We are still trying to work this out. So go back in and bring those. I'm not going to call them soft skills, because if they were easy, everybody would be doing them. These are, I'm going to call them life skills or people skills. People skills. What are we? EQ, right? Being able to communicate compassionately. Expectation management. I have a course that I created called Feedback Revolution, because the younger generations, you need to talk differently to them to get them to perform and believe in themselves. And they are our next executive leaders. So it's important. That succession planning starts with good feedback. So that's my second tip. Get these managers some skills so that you don't lose people. And step three is start looking for passive candidates for DEI. So everything that I've suggested is going to be sort of a cascading effect. So the DEIB inclusion piece is going to be a fourth tip that I won't mention, but you need to start looking for passive candidates. Hiring managers know they need to open up their aperture on where they're looking. Their current pools are not enough. There is AI-enabled software that helps do things like this, right? There's companies like Seek Out that are doing this phenomenally and increasing representation at different levels this way. So we need to bring in more diverse candidates. We need to equip managers with better people skills, and we need to have CHROs with some power sitting at the table.
Wow. Yeah, you've covered quite a broad spectrum here. Even though it does flow from the top down, you've got to get everybody involved at every level. It looks like it's not just the HR's problem. It's not just the CEO's issue, but everybody needs to be involved in creating that culture that keeps retention rates high, attracts the right candidates, right? Everyone's happy. Tell us, you did mention about your program Feedback Revolution. Can you mention a little bit more about that? Excuse me. What is that program?
I have an entire course called Agile Leader, the science of building high trust cultures. And within it, I have 8 modules, and Feedback Revolution is one of them. So all of the training that I'm suggesting, I have an entire soft skills suite to help managers learn everything they need to learn, including the neuroscience of bias, Feedback Revolution, how to manage conflict and identify the difference between productive conflict that you need for innovation and destructive interpersonal conflict that's going to create problems, distractions, and tank your productivity. So just being able to help these leaders get a leg up into the skills that are going to improve their resiliency, help attract and retain. The trouble is nobody's going to want to leave these managers. Because there's people out there that are nodding their heads when there's within a really big division, and there's this one manager who just gets it. They put up the crap umbrella, nothing from upstream hurts their team. They take the head if something goes on with their team. They celebrate the team when things goes right. So the soft skill suite or life skill suite that I've built helps these people people who don't naturally come by that skill set, help them develop those. And I believe it's an 8-week endeavor, basically. Well, it's 8 modules, but you can do them. You can do them quickly if you want to. You can do the crash course. Do it in a boot camp style.
Right. So it's a self-study type style.
It is a self-study. It can be. I designed it to be e-learning, and it can also be facilitated. That's the better way to do it, because really a lot of these skills, if there's people skills, that got to be practiced. You have to learn how to have a difficult conversation, and calling somebody on their bias in a respectful, compassionate way requires practice. And I would say even more so being a middle-aged white man who has invited upstream feedback. If you have the courage to do that and hopefully you do, because that's what high trust culture means. When you actually receive that, being able to just relax in the cognitive dissonance of, oh my gosh, my whole core values are being called into question. And the answer is yes, that's
Mhm.
important. But not in a mean
Mhm.
way. Hey, there's nothing wrong with you. There's no blame, shame, or judgment. But again, these things
Right.
require practice. That's that whole SEL thing I was talking about, the social emotional learning and habit evolution
Yep.
path of neuroscience that I bake into all my training.
Wow.
And
Okay.
the reality is the EQ side of things will be the make or break of if you have a job in 48 months. If you're working in, so let's just take a single position. You are the manager of a large medical facility, and you manage the billings and payment. Your job will be obsolete. I'm just going to put it right out there within the next 48 months. AI is moving so fast that that job will not be needed. However, the person on the other side of the phone that's serving the person that's questioning how do I get this dealt with? That job will not be replaced. So if you could make yourself, and I love how we're really going into this because I'm very high EQ, not quite high IQ at times, but I'm very high EQ. It's like I can stand in a room and I'm not going to say I'm not Angela knows me. I think she'll vouch for this. I'm not I'm not into like the tarot cards and all that, but I can stand there and I can sense when somebody's feeling out of place.
Yeah.
And I will go up and, hi, how you doing? What do you do? How can we serve you? Okay. Hey, oh, you've got to meet this person. You've got to meet that person. Let's take your, and I'll literally take them by the hand. That is something that AI will not be able to replace.
Correct.
Right? AI will be able to replace the person checking you in with a name tag. These
Indeed.
are just
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No.
I totally jumped on you just now.
No,
Go ahead.
you go ahead. I'm good.
Okay, my apologies. I don't know if this is relevant, but I'm in a quadrant in the work styles framework that we do for talent optimization called innovation and agility. And people in my particular work style have something that we call collaborative interrupting, where we get where you're going. We're like, ooh, yes, and it's kind of a yes, and also I'm Jewish, and that is just what we do. And so I usually just apologize to people. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, if you've ever heard a conversation at a Jewish table during dinner,
No, I get it.
it's this massive.
Yeah. I'm Greek, so I get it. I get it.
Okay, you get it. So my
Yeah.
apologies.
I'm from a trailer park in Kansas, and I totally get it. As long as there's a potato salad and something with a marshmallow in it, the conversation's going.
And I'm from the Midwest, so I get that. I'm like, I'm looking for the Jello mold with the shaved carrots.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Whereabouts in the Midwest?
I'm with you.
Whereabouts?
Absolutely. Oh, I'm for those who aren't watching, but I'm from Michigan, right here in the middle,
Okay.
East Lansing.
Okay. So if you go south and to the left, I'm from Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, okay, very good.
Yeah.
There
I'm
we
from the
go.
Midwest too. So
Yeah.
and actually, honestly, Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba are the Midwest of Canada. So
Yeah,
pretty much.
basically, Alberta's basically Texas North kind of thing, right? So
I've lived in Lower Canada.
there's going to be a lot of people who are left behind who are going to really struggle. There's a lot of change coming. We thought the pandemic was big. Oh, dude, what's coming down the pipe over the next 24 to 48 months when the AI developers, when our commercial space is faltering, when B and C commercial space, and just so people know, we're seeing bank collapses because the money is leveraged. A lot of it's leveraged in commercial buildings, and commercial buildings are collapsing because nobody's going back to the workspace because AI is coming in and making it so. Because the pandemic said we could all work from home. This is literally a domino effect. But at the end of the day, human beings will be the deciding factor. Being human will be the deciding factor. What do you do, Maura? What is, give me an example of some of the things you do. It doesn't have to be business related, because we know that rising tides raise all ships. And you already shared your course, which is getting people in touch with that EQ, bringing that into the IQ workspace. Pavlov's law is not going to be the way that we get moving forward. Don't beat people over the head hoping they'll adopt new behaviors. Nurture it. So what do you do to help raise the tides for others?
Well, I worked a very long time in the women's empowerment space, the intuitive empowerment space. I wrote a book called Unbreakable Woman: Compassionate Self-Defense and Empowerment. And I wrote this book because I was doing martial arts
Mhm.
and I was going to, and my whole life, I've been afraid that I was going to be attacked. I'm a small woman. I started lifting weights at a very early, well, I started lifting weights in college and I was terrified to walk across campus by myself. I had the keys in my hand. I had my weight belt and I was smacking it on the ground. I'm like, I pity the fool that jumps on me because we're both going to get hurt. I am not afraid to hurt you, but I don't want to. In fact, I took martial arts because I only had one move and it wasn't a very pleasant one. And I thought, I don't want to kill anybody. If somebody makes a mistake because they're wounded emotionally and they're predating on women to take their power, that those people shouldn't have to die. They should get help. And I don't want to be the person who ends that. So I recognized that there was a real disconnect and that men were teaching women how to fight like men. And I thought, this is not where women's power is. If women are throwing punches and kicks, they've totally bypassed all of the strength and power that we come by intuitively. So I wrote the book, number one, to help women protect themselves, but number two, to develop compassion for the broken, wounded man children that were walking around who didn't know what else to do. Compassion for them helps you avoid them, number one,
Yeah.
and basically pray for them. I mean, like, listen, these are innocent people who went through some terrible, terrible things. And once I started working in this way, I thought, well, wait a minute. This is not the answer because this is a symptom. Men behaving badly is women needing protection is a symptom. So I went further down into the root, and this really comes back to my childhood of being taught always work at the root of the problem because this an inch of effort will take you a mile. And I recognize the problem here is men. And actually, more specifically, I want to rephrase that. The answer here is men. The solution here is men. And I can't speak to men about man stuff unless I've been invited. Only men can really do that. And frankly, I had a man tell me yesterday, it's not your job. I'm like, you're damn right it's not. And I don't want that job. I recognize the problem. So I thought, how can me as a woman who it's not my job, how can I help create more inclusion and belonging and representation in organizations? How can I contribute to that? It's my podcast, See Change. I bring on self-described rich white guys, CEOs, presidents, who have successfully brought in people of color and women into their top decision-making positions, and their businesses have flourished. They have figured out how to be active allies. They are helping other men be better men. And knowing that I can't do it, it's not my job. I'm bringing in every single voice I can think of that might resonate with the men who are sitting in homogenized teams who recognize the future but have no idea how to break free of the bro culture. My show talks to men who have done it, who have de-risked it for them, and are giving them practical steps on how to do it. That is how I am raising up the tide for women and people of color and differently abled people and transgender, all of it. That is my way of contributing as best I can. And it just got ranked top 5 business podcasts worldwide. So far, so good.
What's
Ooh.
can you give me the name of that podcast again, please?
See Change. C,
Change.
the letter C,
Oh,
dash
the letter.
change.
Oh, that's clever.
Thank you.
I see what you did there. I see
you.
what you did there.
See
And it's-
Change, See Change podcast.
See Change
Yeah.
podcast, changing business culture for good.
Oh, I love it.
See what I
I
did there?
love it. Yeah, and getting to the root cause is, of course, we have to do that, in this issue and what you deal with, with the organizations that you work with in changing their culture. It's like, let's get to the root cause, right? Instead of slapping a Band-Aid solution on it,
Oh, and I
which I
spelled
see
podcast.
a lot
I
of
spelled
times
podcast.
happening.
That's what people are doing. They're checking the boxes. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
you can continue to spend billions of dollars are spent in bias training, or you could take an afternoon and get a little uncomfortable and do the work that every single man and woman of color has been doing in millennia, adapting to you. Now
Yeah,
we're
I think
asking you to do the work. And I know it's hard and it's time. And that's what's going to increase the performance. That's what's going to give you the output you're looking for. You have to do the changing now.
Yep. Yep. It's just like in your personal life, right? You can't get to the other side of a trauma, of something that's negatively affected you, unless you go through it and you actually deal with it, right?
Yep, you can't.
Same.
You have to surrender your way through it, and that is not a word people like.
No, it's uncomfortable.
I
It's
hate
uncomfortable.
it.
Of
I
course.
don't like it, and it has been the root of my success. It has been the root of everything beautiful and juicy that has come into my world. It has
Juicy.
been the
There's that
root.
word again.
What's that?
There's that juice. There's that word again. Juicy. It's our
Back.
theme. It's our theme. Well, what I'm going to ask you this now. So all this work that you do, it's got to be, at times taxing and heavy, right? So what do you do for some levity in your life? Is there something that feeds your soul? Is there, I know do you still practice Muay Thai? Is there a books that you read, or courses that you take, or podcasts you listen to? How do you unwind?
Well, uh, almost all of the business books are part of my professional development, and because there's no MBA for culture, I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of
Yeah.
reading and listening to books on tape, so I don't really unwind that way. I have a very deep and rich spiritual practice, and it is just about everything you can imagine. It is a smorgasbord of Hinduism and Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism and Islam, all of the things that seem to have a universal application. All of the Buddha type figures or Christ-like figures and all of their teachings really ground me in what's important, because this work is bigger than all of us, and it is a rising tide that requires all of us to be at our higher, I should say, to be in our best versions of ourselves. God, that is so cheesy. I want to change what I just said. I would say, in order for us to bring the best of ourselves to our work, that's how the work is going to do the best for everybody. So in order for me to do that, I got to go inward. I have to go into my heart and cultivate a deep sense of reverence for, like, what's really happening is none of my business. I'm just here to do my best. And I can only do what I can do in this incarnation. I don't know how long I'm going to be on this planet. So having a deep reverence for something so much more, so much bigger and more profound than me helps ground me in, like, it's just relax. It's just planet Earth, just people. It's just, and recognize the perfection of it all. It kind of, it does lighten it up a little bit, and recognizing, okay, everything is balanced. Just because the media doesn't show us a balanced view of what's happening in the world, there is so much beauty and expansion and good and consciousness rising that is going on. There is so much happening that people are completely unaware of because it's being hidden from us. And I go to those places and I consume that content, and it fills me with hope that all of us are our brothers and sisters, and we're all just walking each other home, and we're all really going to the same place. So if you don't want to come back and do this human trip again, you might want to work through that greed.
Yeah.
Way to call it. Way to call it.
I'm totally with you. My background is 20 years in real estate, while also doing the last 10 years in media, and the greed language I question a lot. I'm not sure when the American dream went from apple pie and mom to owning your own jet and having 40 pairs of Pradas. So that's just me, folks. I can't wear heels even on a good day. So
Not anymore. Yeah, there was
no.
a certain age I hit where it was an outright refusal. I'm
Yeah.
like, nope,
Nope.
no,
Nope.
not anymore.
I really want to point out a couple things. I want to put the name of your book up here. I was just looking online. We're going to make sure that we have links for so much of what we've talked about today in the closing of the show notes, but the unbreakable woman, compassionate self-defense and empowerment. And I know that is, I personally have talked to women who are coaching, teaching, training this. A lot of it is in awareness. And you've talked a lot today around awareness of where the culture is, awareness of where your beliefs are, awareness of the messaging you put in together, awareness of the team engagement. And I think that for me, that's really what I'm pulling. That if I was to put one word on this entire podcast, is awareness.
Agree. Self-awareness for sure.
Yeah,
It all starts with
absolutely.
self. It all
Absolutely.
starts with self. Thank
So
you for pointing that out. Self-awareness, step one.
step one. So what I'd like you to do right now is, please, for our audio audience, could you please share with us where people can find you and follow up and engage with you? Tell us, like, any socials, anything you got going, any websites, anything and everything.
Sure. I'm mainly on LinkedIn. That is my favorite social. It's kind of I wouldn't say it's my only social. Maura Barclay, on LinkedIn. I also have an Instagram account called Soulful Leader. It's SOULFULEADER. So it's missing an L. That's correct. And that's kind of more the uplifting coaching stuff, right? It's kind of more the mindfulness part of what I do, that the grounding part. So those are my main socials. And of course, my website is maurabarclay.com. And there is an email, and you can reach out to me and my team there. So however you want to interact with me, I would say website or LinkedIn is where you're going to get me quicker.
Awesome.
Perfect.
LinkedIn is our playground. That's where we're actually in the process of moving over to.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty excited about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
And I wanted to just call out one other thing, because I see, this show is really about women helping women. And I have seen, unfortunately, some of the worst behavior, because men are assholes in one way, but when women do it, there is something very special and awful about when women are
Yep.
assholes to each other.
Right?
It is a sharp knife.
I
And
know.
it's almost, well, I don't want to get too deep into it, but let's just put it to you this way. I've seen women basically give into the bro culture, because that's the only way that they could get into the club, and they get into that treehouse and they pull that ladder right on up after them, and they do not want to see you there. They will not lift the velvet rope for you. So I would just like to give a couple of words to the women who are listening. When you are collaborating with other women, we can't afford not to help each other. So I would ask you this: if you think that you're helping women, are you rooting for them? This is that self-awareness piece.
Yeah.
Are you really rooting for them, or are you competing with them? There's nothing wrong with healthy competition. We will make each other better. That's the point. That's awesome. That is a good thing. Are you rooting? And if you're not, you need to spend some quiet time, and figure out, why am I insecure? Are we having a scarcity thing? When women help each other, when they root for each other, that scarcity thing goes away. I promise you. And we also need to call each other out, but do it with compassionately. We got to hold each other accountable as sisters, and we need to support and root for each other. When women root for each other, those women lift the rope.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's nothing like seeing somebody's face change when you tell them some good news. It's like, what was that? Right? Like, are you really happy for me? But yeah, I agree that women, we have to do a better job of rooting for each other, of collaborating. That's what this whole show is based on.
Yeah.
Right? Women helping other women, like you said. Well, as we end our time here shortly, I want to ask you one last question, and that is, what is that best piece of advice that you've been given that has really helped you go the distance in life or business, either or?
Gosh, I think it was twofold, if that's not a problem. The
No.
one, okay, yes, presume positive intent. Start there.
Yeah.
Just presume positive intent, because you don't know what you don't know, and then just start asking questions. This could resolve half of the petty interpersonal BS that goes on. Even in marriages, presume positive intent. What did you mean, you ask? genuinely. And the second piece of advice was be curious and ask lots of questions, right? Just assume positive intent and then ask a bunch. Listen. That was my big lesson, and it helped me with my humility. I needed a lot of help with my humility.
Yeah.
Uh, my imposter syndrome was creating some ego situations, and the humility was actually came from accepting and understanding my gifts and my strengths and my own power. And the more I did that, the more curious I became. So recognize that sometimes your desire to talk is that self-doubt.
Yeah,
Angela,
that's powerful.
you know
I
you know
feel
what my favorite piece of advice I've received lately
Go, Kim.
Mm-mm.
is from
Yeah.
our own Maura Barclay. A company's culture is its currency. So
Oh,
I love that. I love that. Gave me goosebumps. Gave me goosebumps. And remember, folks, if you don't think the stage is large enough, then go out and build a bigger stage. Be loud enough. Be loud enough. Make the stage bigger and invite everybody up on it. Everything's better at a party. Everything's better at a party.
And there's
So,
enough to go around, right? There's enough for everybody.
there's plenty. That scarcity
Yeah.
business, that
Yeah.
there is an illusion, and it's a manipulation tactic to get a particular behavior. Because when people are distracted competing against each other, then they're not paying attention to the BS you are doing.
Yeah. And it comes from an insecure place. So
That's right. It's
don't be
misdirection.
that person. Don't be
It's
that
not
person.
true. And if there is some sort of thing going on, then that's a culture issue. And there are
Yeah.
plenty of official channels that you can leverage to work that out.
Amen.
and there's the soundbite for the beginning of the show.
There you
You make it
go.
so easy,
Perfect.
Maura. Oh, you know what?
Yes.
We could talk. I could talk like hours. I could listen to you for hours. You are amazing, and I am excited to connect further with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
You two ask really, really good questions. Wow, this has been
We
such a
try.
pleasure. I love your questions and I love your premise. And I'm so glad that you're out here putting those signals out for women to reassure them like cooperation is better. And let's create a model that's more sustainable where we help each other and show people how it can be. You don't
and
like
Yeah.
it. Build a
and
better
find your opposite and love on them. Don't be afraid of them. Don't think it's something wrong with you. Just find your opposite. Find your opposite because opposites make stronger. It like really makes everything better. All right.
All right. Thank you,
You are a
Maura.
rock star.
Amazing.
Angela, how you
You
feeling?
too.
How you feeling,
Really
Angela?
good. I wanna
Excited,
go
eh?
spar with Maura
I
someday,
do.
maybe.
It's
Hey?
been a while. Let me just hold the pads for you. I have a feeling
Yeah.
that you would just drop me in a second.
I'm only 5'5", so I'm just a little bit taller than you, but I am probably, a little bit different weight
Better
class.
yet, let's put the roller skates and put you guys in the rink. There
Now
Oh,
you
yeah,
that
go.
I
is,
did that
I'll
too.
roller
I
skate
did
with
that
you
too.
all day long. I am
Perfect.
definitely. I'm from the '80s. Roller skating's my jam.
Oh.
Like that is my
Oh,
zone.
me too.
Oh my
Me
gosh.
right.
too,
You
girl.
guys, while we continue this love fest, we'll catch you all up on the next time. Everybody, be good to yourself, be kind, and be aware of what you're saying and how you're showing up and who you're serving. All right.